When you see this piece of art called the Quantum Cloud, you know you're getting close. Welcome to Greenwich, England, in the UK. Now, if you happen to find yourself on the north side of the River Thames, one of the more interesting ways to get over to Greenwich is the cable car system. It's run by the Transport for London, the same folks that run the tubes and the buses around town. You can use your Oyster card to get on and off. It's very quick and efficient. And the ride's relatively inexpensive for what it is. It's a 10-minute journey across the river. They can speed it up to 5 minutes during rush hour when they get the volume of people starts to build. And it's a great way to cross over and catch some scenery while you go. This was built for the Olympics in 2012. On your way across, make sure to make note of the dome with the metal scaffolding coming out of it. That's the O2 Center, and it was used in the Olympic Games in 2012. Now the entire length of the system that gets you from one side to the other is approximately 1 kilometer, and it goes from the Greenwich Peninsula to the Royal Victoria Dock. On the opposite side of the car, you will look off to the distance. You will see the great flood barriers that were built in the 80s to protect the city of London from floods and extremely high tides. Quite a marvel of engineering. It closes when the water gets at a certain level. Pretty interesting. Now once you get into onto the other side, look for this ship that's on display. It's the Cutty Sark. It's a tea clipper built in 1800s. It used to carry tea from China to England, and it was restored recently and is in quite good shape now. Well worth seeing. Now if you're trying to find it, it's right in front of a dome, which is the Greenwich Foot Tunnel. It goes under the River Thames, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, but it's right at the entrance to that if you're trying to find it geographically. This is one of the last clipper ships built like this. It was built just at the tail end of the sailing era, right before steam propulsion kicked in, and only had a short life doing tea runs to China before the Suez Canal opened, which meant shorter routes to China, and so it turned to the wool trade, which went back and forth to Australia at that point. This is one of 2 remaining ships from the 19th century that was built that are still in one piece like this. Situated right beside the Cutty Sark is the Royal Naval College. It's a collection of buildings created by Sir Christopher Wren of St. Paul's Cathedral fame. Quite a notable guy for creating the landscape of London and nearby areas like Greenwich. Construction began in 1696 and went to 1712, and it was originally Greenwich Hospital for disabled sailors. In 1869, the hospital was closed, and it became the Royal Naval College after that, and stayed that way until 1998. After that, it was open to the public. The hospital was originally constructed on the instructions of Queen Mary II. Evidently, she was inspired after witnessing sailors returning from a battle, and decided to create a home for retired and disabled veterans. Initially, the plans called for the building to wrap all the way around, but there was a portion of the original palace that was of the Tudor period that was still standing. In fact, it's called the Queen's House is what they refer to it now, and it's the only part of the original palace that was on these grounds initially. So the building was constructed in 2 parts, where there would be an unobstructed view of the Queen's House from the River Thames, and from a distance you can see right through the middle and see the building right dead in the center. That's the Queen's House. Now this site is where King Henry VIII was born, along with 2 of his daughters, Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary. Originally, in 1443, there was another palace built here. It was at one point described as being the same level of quality and grandeur as Hampton Court Palace, and was one of the favorites of Henry VIII. And this is where that used to be. It's all begone besides the one portion known as the Queen's House, but the rest of it's no more. Fell in disrepair around the time of the English Civil War. Another thing you'll want to catch when you come through here is the Maritime Museum. It's excellent in its artifacts and things that it has. Here you're looking at a representation of Nelson's ship in a bottle. This location is where Sir Walter Raleigh is reported to have put down his cloak so the Queen could cross over a small puddle. Quite a well-known story if you've read anything about Sir Walter Raleigh. Some say that is a myth, but it's a great story either way. Situated a little further back from the river and a little further back from the Naval College is Greenwich Park. It is very nicely laid out and well maintained. And if you follow this pathway up, you can go all the way to the Royal Observatory on the top of the hill. The observatory was commissioned in 1675 by King Charles II, and the site for the actual observatory was chosen by Christopher Wren. He was evidently an astronomer as well as an architect and many other things at the time. So this has been here quite a long time. The Halley's Comet was actually discovered from this location. Something else that's noteworthy is the big orange ball at the top. Every day at 1 o'clock this ball drops. It's a visual indicator to sailors on the River Thames so they can set their clocks accurately, which is pretty important for navigation. Now, if you've ever been to a New York City New Year's Eve celebration or have seen it on TV, you might have seen something similar that's done in a modern fashion. The ball drops, and at the very end it's midnight and the New Year has arrived. That's where this comes from, this tradition of ball drop. It was a visual indicator of time. Now, where that would be important is when you're navigating at sea and you need a good bearing on where you are longitude-wise. Greenwich also has the distinction of being where the prime meridian is. You can stand on the east and western hemisphere at the same time, and the zero mark is right here at this location. Everything east and west is denoted from this point. Now once you get back down off the hill and you're at the bottom near the Cutty Sark, where we showed at the beginning of the video, you'll notice this domed building. Now if you go down in here, you can either go down the stairs or go down the lift, and what it is a pedestrian foot tunnel that goes underneath the River Thames. This is really interesting because it was built over 100 years ago and it's still in use today. So if you don't want to take the gondola ride over or a ferry or the tube or whatnot, you can actually walk under the river, and this is a pretty neat construction. The lift or elevator, depending on where you're from, is actually large enough you can take your bike or walk it across. So you see a lot of folks transiting across through the tunnel. Sorry for the video's not quite lined up here, but it's a great little walk and well worth seeing if you want to say you've actually walked under the river. And once you get out of the tunnel, it comes out in a great area on the other side of the river in the Isle of Dogs, and you can come up to the park, which has a great view of the Naval College and the observatory up on the hill. If you look really hard, you can see the Cutty Sark mast in the distance there, and just an excellent place to relax on a bench and eat lunch or just take it easy for a bit. Well, this has been my video on Greenwich, England. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any places you'd like to add that people ought to see, put it down in the comments. Appreciate you watching.